So thank you very much. First of all, you see there's two faces on this slide. Unfortunately, Evren from Amgen couldn't make it today. So bad news is you will be hearing a little bit less from Amgen. You will be hearing a little bit more from me, which, however, gives me the flexibility to also talk about some additional use cases beyond the scope of Amgen. So who am I? I'm the co-founder, co-CEO of Retorio. I founded an AI company 7 years ago out of my PhD program at the Technical University in Munich. And at the time, we saw a lot of Silicon Valley-based startups building AI agents to replace humans. And at the time, we thought, can't we use AI to actually make human performance irreplaceable? And that, to this day, is where we're aiming at. We believe that us humans, we will continue to have a role. And we believe that the job of AI is not to replace us, but actually to make us better in our jobs. And speaking of human performance, right now human performance is a little bit of an unfashionable topic. If you look at the agenda of events like this one, we're mostly talking about AI, about omnichannel, about automation. And as a founder of an AI business, I'm obviously very much pro-AI. But I think we sometimes don't talk enough about the people out there that do a lot of, let's say, the heavy lifting, the sales reps, the field teams, the people that really are in charge of sales performance, right? And while I know a lot of this event is about, putting the stage to omni-channel managers, this one will be about the poor lonely wolves, the sales reps who are not even invited to events like this and who don't get the attention they sometimes deserve, right? And as you all know, in pharma companies, quite often we look at sales reps as an outdated model. We perceive them as expensive, right? And the truth is they are expensive, so most of you guys spend up to 20% of your revenue on sales reps. Actually, you spend 4 to 8 times as much on sales reps as you spend on your overall omni-channel approach. So sales reps clearly are very expensive. And the question often is it worth spending this money, right? And luckily we had this little, let's say, natural experiment 5 years ago, which obviously was unfortunate for the world, but it was good in answering the question if sales reps still have a relevance, right? Through COVID, we had to move a lot of sales activity into the digital space. Sales reps lost access to HCPs quite often overnight. And what happened? Post-COVID pharma launches actually underperformed pre-COVID pharma launches by on average 19%, right? So when sales reps lose access to HCPs, sales tend to go down 19%, which indicates that there might still be a role for sales reps in the future, right? So the question is, why haven't we managed to replace sales reps with digital go-to-market strategies? And the truth is, digital marketing strategies, while in the beginning for a lot of pharma companies it was a hard time adopting these strategies, what we now see is that most of you guys are pretty good at doing it, but the challenge you have is that there's now happening digital oversaturation, right? HCPs are receiving 50, sometimes more emails per day. You're throwing billions of dollars into digital channels. What's happening with that money? Well, it's mostly pushing up prices. It's great for the social media platforms and whoever is in that business, right? But just because you spend more money on it, that doesn't mean that HCPs or even patients will spend more time online, right? Screen time, actually, especially on social media, for the first time since 2008 is actually declining and going down. So outside of the US, at least, for the first time, you see that people actually spend less time on their screens than ever before, which makes these channels even more expensive. And what we now see happening in parallel is that by outsourcing more and more of sales activities to the big CRM players, I know a lot of you guys are excited about Agentforce and about Viva Vault and however it's called, but by outsourcing more and more of the sales activities to digital agents, you're basically losing more and more access to HCPs, right? Because the AI sales agents that you will hire from Salesforce and Viva, they don't work for you. They work for these platforms, right? And they can switch them off with one button, right? So step by step, the CRM system, from just owning your data or controlling your data, they more and more will start owning your whole distribution chain. And keep in mind, a lot of you guys already outsourced a lot of your R&D activities to startups. So what's happening now is that you risk losing your distribution network, and then the question to some extent is, what's left, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that omnichannel and digital sales won't compensate for your field teams not doing their job, right? In order to meet evolving HCP demands, what you really need is actually better field teams. And quite often, I hear the story that HCPs nowadays, they don't want to talk to sales reps anymore, right? There's all these anecdotes of HCPs hiding in little chambers to hide away from the sales reps, right? But the truth is very simple. HCPs don't want to talk to sales reps if they don't perceive any value from it. And the stats don't look very good there. 67% of HCPs actually find interactions with the field force not very useful. And we see that 35% of HCPs are actually stopping or reducing visits from the field teams, which is obviously a problem. And I'm with a background as a behavioral scientist, so I spent the last 10 years initially at university and then as part of my company to figure out why do so many salespeople have such a hard time actually getting access to HCPs and doing their job, right? And what science says is what you need as a sales rep in order to make the sell is you need to be scoring high on perceived warmth and competence, right? So if you don't come across as warmth, HCPs they don't want to talk to you. If you lack competence, HCPs might want to talk to you, but they don't receive any value from talking to you, right? So only if you score high on perceived warmth and competence, you actually have a chance to build a good connection and have meaningful HCP conversations. And what we see right now, and this is some of our own data, is only roughly a third of the sales reps out there actually score high on both warmth and competence, right? So 2/3 of sales reps basically fail. Quite a bunch of them at least score high on one dimension, so it's a bit easier to, let's say, fix them. Almost a third of them score low on both dimensions, right? So HCPs don't like talking to them, and at the same time, they don't perceive any value in talking to them, and it's very hard to fix that. And that's where our clients, including Amgen, Merck, and I will talk a little bit about Madrigal, where they are looking for ways to boost warmth and competence in their sales teams, but they're looking for ways to do it scalably, right? Knowing that budgets will be more limited, right? That they cannot have this spending craziness that they had in the past, right? So they look for affordable, scalable ways to increase warmth and competence. And that's where AI coaching comes into play. It's a product category we shaped 7 years ago. Now it's becoming more and more mainstream. And the idea of AI coaching really is to use the AI as a sparring partner for the sales reps to better prepare for the most important conversations and have more of an impact. And our clients, which are not only within pharma, but also outside of pharma, but within pharma, found a lot of creative ways and meaningful ways to use AI coaching in order to increase performance. And so, for instance, we work with Amgen or Merck, and there it's mostly about oncology and about securing market share with products that are already successfully on the market, but that are under threat from new competition. And we work with companies like Madrigal that are actually disrupting new markets, right, and that are launching products right now and that use the AI coach as a way to very quickly ramp up their teams. So AI coaching can cover the whole value cycle of a product from pre-launch to launch, right? So it can be used to simulate HCP conversations at a point in time where you're legally not even allowed to talk to HCPs about a product. But you can also use it later on to fine-tune messaging, right? To retrain sales reps to secure market share, for instance, by becoming more effective at communicating with HCPs. And just to make this a bit more concrete, because I know it's very abstract, I want to show a more concrete example. So in this case, I want to look at a product launch like we do for Madrigal Pharma, right, where time is money, right? So if you have the pressure to launch a new product, in this case, every day of this product not being on the market might be roughly €1 million in lost profit. So it's very key in these situations to be fast, right? And sales coaching is a great way, AI sales coaching, to basically bring in the speed and make sure that people get up to speed as quickly as possible. And how this works is very simply, right? In the first step, similar to your human coach, you need to tell the AI sales coach what you try to accomplish, right? So you need to give him, her, it a briefing, and that happens through prompting, right? So our platform includes what we call the session generator, and through the session generator, you tell the AI coach in detail what you're trying to accomplish. So in this case, we're looking at a product launch, so you want to maybe train your sales reps to ask the right questions about the existing products that HCPs are using. You might want them to highlight clinical evidence, right? So you want to train them on basically delivering scientific evidence in the most effective way. And maybe you want them to discuss concrete use cases of patients who could benefit from the treatment, right? So basically you tell the AI what you're trying to accomplish. Obviously, the AI at this point doesn't know much about your product or the market, so you can enhance this configuration with PDFs you attach to it, right? So your product descriptions, clinical studies, competitor information, and you basically give it more background to make sure it really understands what you're trying to accomplish. Then in the next step, you know that typically you want to target different types of HCPs, right? Or maybe even buyer personas. We're not limited to HCPs. And what our clients do, they have what we call the persona generator, and they build different types of HCPs, right? Different segments. In some cases, this is based on a global segmentation. So Merck, for instance, launches trainings globally, and they develop these personas centrally and then roll them out into different markets and let the markets localize them. But Amgen in Austria here, for instance, they do it bottom up, right? And they let the market build their own personas and make them very localized, and then later on try to expand. And what you do there is, right, you basically build these personas, you give them a face, a voice, you give them needs and pains. So in this case, we're dealing with a key opinion leader. She's evidence-based, right? She wants robust, peer-reviewed clinical data. So this is a little bit one of the tougher ones, I guess, you have to deal with. And she has certain goals, right, that you want to train the sales reps on. And you can give her typical objections that you expect from this type of HCP, right? And this can come from your CRM system. It can come from your strategic documentation, right? And what typically happens is that our clients build this whole library of virtual twins of all the doctors that they have out there in the field, right? And they bring them to life. And if you launch it on a global scale, you can actually use our auto-translation features to automatically translate these personas and the training configuration in 20 languages, and we're adding new languages all the time. So basically, it becomes very easy to roll out a training program, launch it globally, and let the markets then fine-tune it. So in the next step, you now want the sales reps to actually start practicing, right? And one way to do that is by integrating the coaching sessions into their everyday routine. So you can trigger role plays, for instance, through the CRM system, or you just invite them per email, right? And what we do there is we basically mimic a typical HCP conversation. It feels very real. Actually, the whole setup looks like a video call where the virtual client is basically added to the call, right? So the persona we just built, she's now starting to talk to me, and she's basically approaching me, and from now on, my job is to convince her of this new product, in this case, Moldolite, that we're launching, right? And the whole conversation is 100% dynamic, right? So the persona reacts to you dynamically based on the guidelines we set up in building the training program, right? And my job as a sales rep now is to find the right storytelling, the right argumentation to convince this HCP, right? And you see on the right, I will always get a little bit of guidance to make sure I'm not completely lost, right? So in this case, it starts very simply. My first job is just to introduce myself. People typically still manage to do that. Ask the right questions, figure out, what the attitude of the HCP is towards our product, right? But once I make it beyond that stage, the AI coach will give me new objectives, and it will become more complicated. So in a second stage, I now need to talk about phase 3 trial results, right? And then it really becomes about making sure that I produce the right scientific evidence, because if I'm not doing a good job, then my counterpart will not be satisfied and she will throw me out of the call and I have to try again. So obviously during the simulated conversation, we kind of limited in the amount of feedback we can give to you as an end user, because you're very much focused on doing your conversation. So most of the feedback we actually give afterwards. And what's happening there is you can think a bit of it like a game analysis in football, where we record the whole conversation, the simulated conversation, right? And the AI coach will guide you through the video that it took of your conversation, and it will not only pay attention to what you say, but also to how you say it, right? Not just do you produce the right arguments, are you compliant in those arguments? Do you find the right messaging for the persona? But it will show you parts of the video that it took to highlight where you could have done better, right? And it will focus on the top 3 low-hanging fruits that have the biggest impact on your performance if you fix them, right? One benefit of it is, at this point, the AI can look at behavior holistically. So it doesn't only understand what you say, but it also understands your facial expression, your gesture, your body language, your tonality, and it can analyze it holistically, right? So it understands not only what you say, but if the behavior you show while saying it matches the situation and the requirements of the persona. So you can get very in-depth feedback on your confidence, on the empathy that you showed, right? Keep in mind what we ultimately try to improve is warmth and competence, and it's not just enough to produce scientific evidence, but you really want to show that you can also build a relationship with the HCP. And the last thing, and that's something that our clients often realize a little bit later, is now you have all these sales reps, MSLs, whatever around the world interacting with simulated HCPs, so there's a lot of data you get back from that, right? So we can basically analyze that data and look for strengths, for weaknesses in the team. We can figure out, where the sales rep fail, right? Which personas they have an easy time communicating with, how good they are at actually applying your messaging, right? And if they follow your strategy effectively. And you can track step by step to which extent the sales reps are actually improving on the warmth and competence spectrum. And all the data is available through an API, so you can also connect it to performance data, right? And figure out which training programs have the biggest impact, for instance, on sales performance. And this is some data across our clients in pharma. This is not just Amgen, but this is a wider range of clients. And what we typically see is that through the use of Retorio, people practice 7 times more often than they did before. We often replace conventional role plays that sales reps used to hate. Now they can practice in a psychological safe space, right? They tend to do that a lot more often. It's also a lot more cost effective. Within the first 10 coaching sessions, they typically improve 14% in terms of warmth and 15% in terms of the competence that they signal to the HCP, which then on average translates into 8% higher CSAT scores, 15% more HCP meetings. We can actually also simulate phone calls where it's about getting a meeting in the first place, right? We're not just limited to the actual meeting, but also we can prepare you to have more meetings. And what we observe when we involved in product launches is that typically our clients can ramp up their sales team up to 38% faster. And that on average translates into 7% more revenue, which is obviously the most interesting KPI. So if there's one thing you take away from this is, first of all, please don't give up on your field teams. You will still need them. And give them what they need to become top performers. Help them to get out there. It's a rough job. Use the technologies that are available today to get them up to speed. If you're interested in learning more, we have a booth out there. You can sign up on our website. You can try it. We're happy to give you a demo. Thank you for the attention and look forward to seeing you.